you can achieve it all. The dream job, the right person, the perfect body, the praise you always long to hear, and still feel like something is missing. It's as if deep down, there's an emptiness that nothing fills. But no one talks about it. Everyone keeps posting smiles, collecting invisible trophies, pretending to feel whole. And there you are, quietly wondering, why don't I feel complete yet? Maybe the answer is harsh, but freeing. Nothing will complete you. And accepting that might be the beginning of your freedom. The truth is, we've been taught to look for meaning in all the wrong places. They said once you have that thing, everything will change, but that day never comes. Because life doesn't happen in the future. It's happening right now, in the space between one desire and the next. And the more you chase the feeling of wholeness, the more you drift away from yourself. What few dare to say is that maybe the hole you feel isn't a flaw, it's a path. And the emptiness you fear so much might actually be an invitation. This video is a conversation, one of those nobody has, but everybody needs. There's no ready-made formula here, no easy promises. But there is something far more rare, clarity. If you're tired of searching outside for something that's always been within, maybe you're ready to stop running, ready to listen, and maybe, for the first time, understand that what you're missing was never what you thought. Have you ever felt like you're always chasing something, as if a part of you is missing but you can't quite name it? It may seem like once you reach the next achievement, you'll finally feel whole. But when you get there, all you feel is a brief relief followed by a fresh emptiness. It's like trying to fill a leaking cup. No matter how much water you pour in, it always escapes. The issue is that we've been taught to link wholeness with accomplishments, as if the answer lies outside ourselves. And then the cycle begins. More goals, more promises of future happiness, more silent frustration. Look around you. How many people do you know who have everything to be happy, a good income, stability, a family, yet still live anxious, restless, as if always owing something to themselves? That's no coincidence. We grew up believing happiness lives somewhere down the road, never right here. But no one taught us that road never ends if we keep trying to fix an internal problem with external solutions. It may sound cruel, but it's true. The world can't give you anything that will heal a pain you carry inside. And we only realize that after we've exhausted ourselves trying. Some people try to fill that hole with work, others with relationships, with food, with addictions disguised as hobbies. But the mechanism is always the same, avoiding inner silence. Have you noticed how uncomfortable it is to be alone in silence, with no screen in front of you, no future plans? The absence of noise exposes the lack we've been trying to ignore for years. It's as if, without distraction, we're forced to face what we've been avoiding all along. And then comes a question few are brave enough to ask. What if nothing is ever enough? What if the issue isn't what I lack, but what I haven't yet accepted in myself? How many times have you told yourself that old phrase? When I have that, then I'll be okay? It could be a car, a house, the perfect body, the dream relationship. Each person has their own when I have it. But notice, every time you get there, the feeling of fulfillment is short-lived. Soon, you create a new one and start running again without realizing you're trapped in a finish line that never arrives. It's like a rigged game where the only rule is to keep you perpetually dissatisfied. This trap is seductive because it gives us the false sense of control. It's comforting to believe that just one more thing is missing for everything to fall into place. But that's just emotional illusion. Happiness isn't in the future. And when you bet everything on something you don't yet have, without learning to value what's already in front of you, you turn into an emotional beggar, begging for crumbs of satisfaction that evaporate as soon as they arrive. That explains why so many successful people feel miserable inside, even with everything the world applauds. Here's a simple but powerful exercise I often recommend. Take pen and paper and write down everything you have today that you once dreamed of having. The house you live in, the job you hold, your family, even that phone that once seemed out of reach. Do this and observe how you feel. You'll likely realize that most of those achievements didn't deliver what they emotionally promised. That's because what truly completes you can't be bought, conquered, or posted on social media. It's in the way you see yourself, or avoid yourself, in silence. And that's usually where most people get stuck. Silence is a cruel mirror. When the external voices fade, what's left is you, along with everything you've tried to hide from yourself. And that's frightening. Because deep down, we know we won't like everything we find. That's why so many people stay endlessly busy. Noise fills the space, distracts, protects. But if you never allow yourself to stop, how will you ever hear what your own heart is trying to say? Silence isn't the enemy. It's the doorway to a conversation you've been postponing for years. Have you ever tried going a whole day without consuming content? No phone, no TV, no music, no small talk? At first, it's unsettling, almost suffocating. But it's in that uncomfortable space that the reconnection begins. Suddenly, you realize you've spent years relating to the world without ever building an honest relationship with yourself. And that explains why the emptiness keeps returning. It's not a flaw. It's a cry for help from the part of you that got left behind while you chase the next distraction. Silence points out what hurry hides. That's why cultivating introspection isn't a luxury. It's a necessity. It could be through meditation, journaling, long, aimless walks, or simply sitting on the floor in your room, eyes closed, letting the thoughts come, and not running from them. You can start with 5 minutes a day. The point isn't the time, it's the presence. And the more you get used to your own company, the more you realize that maybe what was missing was never outside of you. Maybe it was always the courage to truly listen. And that changes everything, even if nothing changes. There's a dangerous trap hidden behind the idea of not needing anyone. Self-sufficiency has been sold to us as the ultimate virtue, almost synonymous with strength. But deep down, it's a mask that hides a deep fear, the fear of getting hurt again. When someone says they prefer to walk alone, it's often not maturity, it's self-defense. It's like saying that by not depending on anyone, you also avoid the chance of being disappointed. But it also keeps you from being truly touched, truly loved, truly seen. We grow up hearing we need to be strong, that vulnerability is weakness. But that belief distances us from the very thing that heals us, genuine connection. You can conquer the world alone, but it'll always be an empty victory if there's no one to share it with. A fancy dinner doesn't taste the same if there's no one to share dessert with. A dream come true doesn't shine as bright if no one is there to look you in the eye and say, "I knew you could do it." We are social beings, even when we pretend we're not. One powerful way to break down this armor is to start by asking for help. It sounds simple, but it takes humility. It could be something small, like asking for honest feedback on a project or calling someone just to say you miss them. It also helps to practice active listening, being truly present when someone chooses to open up to you. These small openings create cracks in the wall you built, and it's through those cracks that light gets in. It's not about depending on others to feel complete. It's about realizing that wholeness was never meant to be built alone. It was always about the exchange, the shared gaze that says, "I see you." Have you noticed how much time we spend trying to maintain an image? I'm not just talking about social media, but the way we behave at work, with friends, even at home. It's like, instead of living, we're constantly performing, showing the strong side, the resolved side, the admirable side. And behind that performance lives an old fear that if we show who we really are, we won't be loved. But living to uphold an image is the fastest way to disconnect from your own essence. This carefully built self-image becomes a quiet prison. You start to feel off, but can't explain why. Life may appear to be working, but there's an internal disconnection that's hard to name. It's like you're living an edited, filtered, controlled version of yourself. And the cruelest part is that the more your image is praised, the harder it becomes to let go of it. Because then comes a fear of disappointing, of losing value. But a person's value doesn't lie in the mask they wear. It lives in the truth they have the courage to show. Want to test this in real life? Start saying no when you mean no. Admit a mistake without trying to sugarcoat it. Share something you've never told anyone with someone you trust. At first, fear will scream. But soon you'll realize being real doesn't push people away. It brings them closer. People connect with what's human, not with what's perfect. And the more you allow yourself to be whole, with flaws, doubts, scars, the freer you become. because that's when you stop trying to impress and finally start to live. There's a kind of serenity that only arrives when we stop fighting what is. I'm not saying you should settle or give up on growth, but understand that some battles only exhaust us because we insist on changing what can't be changed. Some pain only fades when you stop resisting it. Some parts of you only integrate when you stop trying to fix them. Acceptance isn't passivity. It's maturity. It's the courage to look at yourself and say, it's okay not to be okay right now. Many people confuse acceptance with defeat, but accepting doesn't mean surrendering. It means freeing yourself from the illusion of control. You can be in a difficult moment, feel anger, fear, frustration, and still take a deep breath and say, this is part of my path. When you start welcoming reality as it is, instead of how you wish it were, a strange kind of peace arises, but a deep one, a calm that doesn't depend on good news, but on a shift in posture, an inner silence that says, I'm here for myself no matter what's happening outside. A simple but powerful practice is to write about something that's hurting you, not to find a solution, but just to understand what you feel. No judgment, no rush, or look in a mirror and say out loud, I accept who I am with everything I carry. It may seem silly, but this kind of gesture slowly reprograms how you treat yourself. And little by little, you'll notice what once made you run now invites you to stay. What once bothered you now teaches you. And just like that, without fanfare, a kind of wholeness is born, one that doesn't need applause, only presence. There comes a moment when you finally understand nothing, absolutely nothing outside of you, will fill what's missing inside. And instead of that thought being terrifying, it starts to feel freeing. Because if nothing can complete you, then maybe you don't have to run so much. Maybe the emptiness you feel isn't a problem to be solved, but a space to be inhabited more consciously. It's not about becoming a better, more interesting, more productive version of yourself. It's about allowing yourself to be whole as you are, and stop begging for crumbs of validation from a world that profits off your lack. The real rediscovery begins when you stop asking what's missing and start asking what part of me is asking to be seen. Because the hole you feel won't be filled with achievements, applause, or promises, but it can be understood, welcomed, turned into wisdom. When you truly listen to yourself without judgment or rush, you start realizing that most of your pain came from trying to be something you never needed to be. And most of your peace comes from radically accepting who you already are, with all the chaos that comes with it. You don't have to search for meaning in the stars or run to distant mountains. You can begin right here, right now, with a deep breath and honest question, what am I feeling? The answer won't come all at once, but will show up in silence, in repetition, in gentleness. And maybe you'll realize that it's not about being complete. It's about allowing yourself to exist without justification. It's about walking lightly, even with scars. Because in the end, no one came into this world to be whole, but to find themselves piece by piece, day by day.